today. And I'm not saying that like in a bragging way. I'm just saying lower your expectations like by 23% or so. And then it'll be better because my brain's a little fried. But thank you, Ellen, for that introduction. As you heard, I'm an architect. I'm not a contractor. I'm not a specifier. I have smooth hands, right? No calluses. And all of the projects that I work on are green, meaning that they're responsible. Meaning that they take responsibility for the energy, the water, the materials, and all those things that we bring into it. What you might not realize is that I see this as inevitable. And in the near future, every building will be a green building. In fact, in the near future, we won't even say green building. It'll be redundant. It'll be like saying code compliant building. You know, it'll just sound weird. Of course, it's like why would you knowingly put cancer-causing chemicals in a building? That's just dumb. Nobody does that anymore, right? That's basically where we're headed. So I'm now deputizing all of you. Here I'm doing this, whatever this is. All of you are now green building professionals, right? I'm because it's basically all of our responsibility. Because the environmental movement screwed up, basically. 30 years ago, someone had this stupid idea. I remember it was a Tuesday. Someone had this stupid idea that we were going to get everybody to agree on everything, and that was just dumb. I apologize. It was a stupid idea because you can't get people to agree on, recycling. That's just like we can't get people to agree on American Idol. You know what I mean? So it's just not going to happen. So the better way is just force it on them. Just shove it down their throat. Just so much easier. And I strongly advise you to do it because first of all, you'll sleep better at night. You'll digest food better. It's just better. Trust me, I've been doing it for 25 years. That way, it worked out pretty well so far. Because I don't know if you realize it, if you're working in green building at all, you're the good guy. I don't know if you know that. And the good guy doesn't need to apologize. Right? I mean, what movie do you see with the good? So stop apologizing. But that's what we've been doing for 30 years. Oh, is it okay if I don't put cancer-causing chemicals in your building? Stop it. That's annoying. Don't do that. Force it on them. So much easier. Just trust me. Hold on one sec. Why is this like this? This is acting weird. There we go. Okay. There we go. All right. So for those of you under the age of 30, if you tweet, here's all the information you need. If you're above 30, just ignore this. I know you don't understand what I'm talking about. Just nod your heads and blink or something. It's fine. Someone young will explain it to you. But I wanted to start with a movie clip just to kind of set the tone for the inevitable downfall you're about to experience this evening. Just to kind of set things on a good footing. And it goes like this.
Dangerous question. Because with our present knowledge, we have no idea what would happen. Even now, man may be unwittingly changing the world's climate through the waste products of his civilization. Due to our release through factories and automobiles every year of more than 6 billion tons of carbon dioxide, which helps air absorb heat from the sun, our atmosphere seems to be getting warmer.
Now this film, first of all, it stars a very young, very handsome Dick Cheney, which is weird. That's just weird to me. It was directed by Frank Capra. Who did it. That's actually true. It is a Wonderful Life. It's true. But this film's from 1958. Everything he says in the film is still true to this day. In fact, the numbers are all much, much worse. So what have we been doing since 1958? Clearly, it's standing still. We haven't really been doing much of anything. And so this is my daughter. I know she's cute. You don't need to make noise. So I took her to this net zero energy project that we did, meaning that the project generates more energy than it consumes. In this project, the panels were not on the roof. They were on the ground because it was a government project. It's just complicated. But they're on the ground, which is weird, right? So she got to go up to the panels and play on them and touch them. And she said, "Daddy, what are these?" And I go, "Oh, honey, those are solar panels. They produce energy from the sun for free." And with the mind of a child, of course, she says, "Well, Daddy, why don't all buildings have this, Daddy? Why?" So I leaned down, and I looked into her cute little face, and And I said, oh, honey, that's because most people are douchebags. What am I going to tell her? The truth? I mean, that'll screw her up. She'll be in therapy. Well, you see, honey, there's this oil and coal cartel that is controlling like, I can't tell her that. That'll mess her up. So it's easier just to, tell her that. That joke, by the way, should have gotten a much bigger laugh. I don't know if you guys are full from the falafel. And we as environmentalists don't help the matter because we tend to overcomplicate things. And I'll give you an example of how. Like here we have 3 light bulbs, right? And we have traditional incandescents, which give off a lot of heat. We have CFLs, right, which are better. And then we have the latest, greatest LEDs. And which, of course, is the greenest option? Does anybody know? See, that's where you're wrong. It's actually the one that's off. You see what I'm saying to you? It's the one that's off. It's clearly better. But look at how these nerds are LEDs. Like they couldn't wait to give the answer. And that's the trouble. It confuses things. And so we're making things worse. Do you know what I mean? Like we're like overcomplicating the issue. And you know what's funny is I show this all over the country and some people don't understand this. They don't see anything wrong with it. Well, it is a Cardinals fan. Yeah. Don't get political now. And really what we're doing is we're catering to the lowest common denominator, and it kind of works something like this.
You know what it says on a box of chocolate pudding mix? Caution, pudding will get hot when heated. Go to a hotel, you know what it says on the shower cap in the bathroom? Fits one head. I read. And I'm dying to know the suit that prompted lawyers to insist on the shower cap.
I can't hear it either.
Can't hear it?
I can't hear it at all.
All right, let's skip it. So basically what we have is a really funny clip that I'll email you instead. That'd be better. So I apologize. I was told there was going to be a mic and there's not. So you're stuck with the yelling. I was trying to create gravitas, but it didn't work. So basically what I've been doing for a few years is I've been calling us as a species dodo sapiens. That's the word I've been using to describe what we are, what we become. Because basically our way of life is knowingly killing us and we just don't seem to do anything about it. And I get to talk with people all over the world about their buildings, and I realized it's a lot like being a parent in a way. And if you're not a parent, you might not know this. It's a little known fact, but being a parent is incredibly, what's the word? Boring. It can be very boring at times. I mean, yes, it's wonderful and loving, but there are times when it's tediously, painfully boring. And sitting with my 6-year-old watching her do like a connect the dots is kind of the exact same feeling I have like waiting for a developer to like understand lead, like that kind of feeling. Like, come on already, you just want them to catch up. It's like coaching a little league team, but for a not very good team. That's kind of what it feels like consulting on green buildings. And you have to like champion these little like, oh, you did low VOC paints, good for you, or oh, low flow fixtures, yay, you should have done that anyway, but yay, And you have to just like champion this. Oh, you did LEED Platinum. Platinum's actually. Oh, not platinum, just certified? Okay, I guess that's good too. Good, every little bit helps. And it's just, you've been all cheerleaders now, and it's just not as effective. And you just have to champion and like rah, rah, rah all the time for these guys, for these little victories that I think should be obvious. And people come to me, they wanted me to assuage their guilt, right? And I have to go, here, Architect Barbie, there, you're free, go on. And all of you have been doing this with your clients for decades. It's annoying. And they ask these crazy questions like, what is my client going to think if I offer sustainability to them? I don't know, that you're doing your job? Like, why are you so terrified of who are your clients that you're that afraid of them? It never occurred to me that in 25 years of doing this, the biggest obstacles wouldn't be the technology or even just like the mainstream media, but actually the biggest obstacle to all this are the building professionals who are just too afraid to speak up to their clients. That, by the way, is called a T-square. We used to use those back in the day.
Those under 30?
That's under 30, you want to understand. Building Design and Construction Magazine did a study, and they interviewed hundreds of people in the building profession, and they said, when are you offering sustainability solutions to your clients? And essentially, 62% said some version of, well, when they ask me to. Like, I won't bring it up unless I'm asked. Which means that 2/3 of architects are basically sitting there just cowering, waiting to like, gosh, I hope he brings up sustainability, and then I'll talk about it. But they won't bring it up otherwise. And that's just weird. I mean, that's strange to me. Like, they talk about sustainability like it's this dirty word. And sometimes they whisper it. It's really funny. Like, they'll be in meetings, and they'll go, do you really think we can have solar panels? Solar panels. Say it out loud. Feels good. Solar panels. It's okay. Nobody will get offended. It's like, who are their clients if they're that afraid to bring up these ideas. I mean, if anything, it should be like, these are probably not their, I hope not their clients, but this is how they act around them. In fact, these are not their, I mean, really what their clients are, so let's face it, clients are probably rich white people. And they're not scary, rich white people, they're very nice. I like rich white people. You know, I aspire to be one day, actually. By the way, I have no idea why Shelley Long from Cheers is in this photo. That's just a weird, that's just a strange thing. By the way, speaking of rich white people, the recession was hard on them too. I don't know if you realize this, but I had some clients, they couldn't open their north gate for like 6 whole months. It was really hard on them. So you should feel bad for them when you see them. We have to stop letting fear prevent us from doing the right thing. We have to stop letting fear motivate us to not do something. We need a little courage, quite frankly. We need to be a little braver. Because if you want to be afraid of something, don't be afraid of your clients. Be afraid of reality, because that's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
This is 131 years of climate data, sped up, of course. And you'll see that we truck right along, and right around World War II, things start to get a little warmer, but still fairly normal. And then right around 1981 is the tipping point, the point of no return, which is why the 10 hottest years on record have all occurred really in the last decade. And so this is what you should be afraid of. I think of my daughter and her generation as the last generation, and not in a morbid way. I mean like the last generation that could just willfully and ignorantly just keep consuming resources without thinking about the consequences, because things are going to change for them. And if you think this is an abstract thing happening when your grandkids are alive, it's happening now. Right now. We're feeling the effects of it right now. Last year, there were 400,000 people who died due to climate change. And I mean in direct response of climate change, due to drought, malaria, food destruction, power supply, flooding, and so forth. So it's happening all now, and it's happening really all over the world. So it's not an isolated thing. I mean, it'd be great if it was just over one country, and that would be, but it's happening everywhere, right? And I didn't know if 400,000 people was a lot of people. I mean, it seemed like a lot to me, but I also know that, 4,000 people a day die from AIDS, right? So maybe in the grand scheme of things, it's not many. But it turns out 400,000 people is a lot of people. It's 2.5 times the amount of people that are going to die from lung cancer this year. It's 10 times the amount of people that are going to die from breast cancer this year. And yet, where's our ribbon? And can it be a green one, maybe with polka dots? Like, can I design it? Those are the things I want to know. You see what I'm saying? 400,000 people is a lot of people. 400,000 people is more people than we're going to lose to strokes, accidents, Alzheimer's, and diabetes combined in this country this coming year. So it's happening now. So I often ask myself, how bad does it need to get? What does rock bottom actually need to look like in order for us to stop waiting to the ass and start doing something and start pushing it? Because the warning signs are there. And they've been coming louder and louder, closer and closer together, telling you that there's something not right. You've seen it. I know you've seen it. We've hit a climate fiscal cliff, a tipping point. Our president goes, there we go. Our president goes on the air and tells us that we need to do something about it. And yet, we don't really do much of anything. This has now become the norm in this country. And the time to act is now. Last year was also an interesting milestone because it was the first time that we spent more on dealing with extreme weather, Hurricane Sandy and so forth, than we did on the federal education budget. Right? $2.6 billion on education last year, which is a lot. $3 billion on dealing with extreme weather, just here in this country. And I know that seems like an obscene amount of money, and I guess it is, but it's nothing compared to the $8 billion that we spend subsidizing the oil and coal companies. So maybe it's just a matter of moving the money out of one column and into another. Because we are responsible. The act of building is responsible for all this. Buildings are the biggest impact of all on the planet. Every year, 3 tons of concrete for every single person on Earth. Every year, almost 2 trees cut down for every single person on Earth. And every year, 600 pounds of steel for every single person just in the US. And powering all of this is not good vibes or love, but fossil fuels, unfortunately, and just an immense amount of fossil fuels. One company, Exxon, is every day sucking 4 million barrels of oil a day out of the ground. And I know as much as that seems like just an immense amount of oil, it's nothing compared to the 92 million every single day that we just keep sucking out of the ground. And eventually you keep thinking, well, that just can't keep going, right? I mean, it's eventually got to stop, right? But it doesn't. Sheikh Imani famously said that the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. Right? The oil age isn't going to end because we run out of oil. It's just going to get harder and harder to get, more and more difficult, more and more politically charged. And we're all waiting for this magic thing, this silver bullet, this Hollywood ending, where someone's going to invent this new thing and you spray it under your armpits twice a day. No more climate change, right? And that would be great, but it's just probably not likely. There's also some other effects of climate change that we're experiencing now. Some are more offbeat, a little weird, that I wanted to share with you, that I want to tell you about. Some of them are stupid, silly things like turbulence in airplanes. Planes are now 10% bumpier because of climate change. That's actually a fact. But even capitalist behemoths like McDonald's are feeling the effects of climate change. And here's how it works.
This is the threat down. McDonald's dollar menu. With just the change I find between my couch cushions, I can eat something with the nutritional value of a couch cushion. That's why this McNugget of McNews supersized my anger and made me grimace. Filet of fish. Jim?
America's favorite fast food joint says goodbye to its dollar menu.
Yes, the dollar menu and more. Or what other restaurants call the menu. And it's all due to climate change. Looky why. Rising temperatures have led to drought conditions in cattle ranching states, forcing ranchers to cull herds and pay more for feed, leading to more expensive cattle on the market. Well, if cattle feed has become so expensive, why don't they just feed those cows stuff off the dollar menu? Think of everything.
So even McDonald's is now suffering due to climate change, and this is happening everywhere. You have to understand that when Olympians push things to new extremes and break records, right? That's what happens, right? And when we push the environment to new extremes, we break records. And now we're breaking about 12,000 climate records every single month. The map is unreadable, basically. And so far, we've been the proverbial frog in the boiling pot of water, right? It just kind of snuck up on us. But now that we know that it's there, and now that we know that it's happening, now it's just going to get uncomfortable. You know what I mean? It's just going to get awkward. It's just going to... Some of the women in the room might not get this. I'll explain it later. There have been other effects that are happening now. Coffee, you all love coffee, right? Well, it turns out that a deadly fungus that likes a warmer, wetter world is thriving in Brazil, and in 70 years they predict that the coffee crop could be almost wiped out. Seafood. It turns out that a warming, wetter world and changing air streams has caused a decrease in catch, and by 2050 there could be 40% less fish in the sea. And I know what you're thinking, well, all that mercury, I shouldn't eat that anyway, right? So what about pasta, your beloved pasta? Well, it turns out that grain production has been declining since 1970, and by 2050 we can see 27% less grain. And I know you're thinking, well, I don't need the carbs, I should be cutting out the carbs. What about your beloved wine? Ooh, wine. Well, it turns out that grape production has been in decline for a while now, and by 2050, 73% less grape production, which here, by the way, in Washington, Oregon, and California is a much bigger deal. And I know you're thinking, well, I'm an alcoholic anyway, so I got to give up wine. But what about your beer, your beloved beer? Which is, look at your faces, wow. There's been a 1% decline in hops production since 1950. So by 2050, that means that there might be no more hops. Wow, look at this Oregon crowd here. But if you learn nothing else from tonight, the chocolate, my God, the chocolate, please.
No.
Yes, it's true.
No.
Just a 1% increase in global temperature is enough to disrupt the fragile ecosystem of the cocoa bean, which means no more chocolate. Please, if you do nothing else, save the planet for the chocolate, will you? It's for me, really. But perhaps the worst effect I've seen of climate change so far, the absolute worst, has been seeing my sister-in-law in shorts. That's been awful. Or seeing my father-in-law in bike pants. That's been equally horrifying. We're just seeing this on the streets of San Francisco anytime I go. Just the ugly naked people all the time. Just yeah, really. Last year, scientists discovered a planet capable of supporting human life, and they call this a Goldilocks planet. And this is how Brian Williams reported on it.
Hunters are calling their discovery a Goldilocks planet. Not too cold, not too hot, possibly just right to sustain water and perhaps life. And it's just nice to know that if we screw this place up badly enough, there is some place we can all go.
Was that the plan? I didn't realize was that the plan? Speaking of astronomers, Neil deGrasse Tyson said that aliens would be shocked to learn that in a universe filled with unlimited free starlight, that human beings are killing themselves over some old energy left in the ground. That's what we've been doing. You okay? You all right? Yeah. But imagine if aliens did come here and they attacked us. And in attacking us, they decided to just like poison our rivers and toxify our soils. They blew up our mountains to get stuff in them, and then just to be jerks, they put genetically modified organisms in our food. Just real like awful stuff. How would we react? Would we summon the might of the military and rise up and fight back against our oppressors? Or would we grant them personhood and give them tax breaks? Like, what would we do? Exactly. And I'm not sure. I don't really know anymore. It turns out the aliens don't need to attack us. They can just kind of wait on the moon, let us all do all the work for them, and just swoop in and everything's finished, right? That's kind of how it's working. All right. You're not going to hear that at all. A friend forwarded this story to me the other day, and he was really angry about it. And basically the headline reads, Republicans vote to appeal an Obama-backed plan to blow up an asteroid that's headed for the Earth. Like Obama was for it, and so the Republicans therefore were against it. And he said this to me like it was real. It's not real. It's fake. It's from The Onion. It's a fake story. But in their minds, this is actually plausible now, that an asteroid's coming to kill us all, and the Republicans, just out of spite, wouldn't do anything about it. And why wouldn't, we're more divided than ever, so why wouldn't they believe? It makes sense, right? But it's not true. But it turns out that because we're so divided, we now have climate deniers in virtually every state, except Nevada, oddly enough, and here. But it's like everywhere you go, even in California, we have climate deniers. And I've talked to these climate deniers, and they're weird people, man. They're strange cats. Climate deniers are essentially, they're the same people who wouldn't believe that Elton John was gay in the 1970s. You know what I mean? And they follow this principle that Sigmund Freud used to call kettle logic. And he tells this story in Interpretation of Dreams where he says that he gave a tea kettle to a neighbor, and the neighbor brought it back broken. And when Freud said, well, hey man, what'd you do to my tea kettle? The neighbor said, I returned it when I gave it, it wasn't broken. It was undamaged. And then the next thing he says is, it was already broken when he gave it to me. And then the third thing he says is, I never borrowed it in the first place. And each statement essentially contradicts the previous one, and none of them are true. And that's what climate deniers do. Because first they say, there's no such thing as climate change. And they go, any climate change we have is not man-made. It's part of a normal, natural cycle. And then any climate change we have, we can easily fix with this stuff called clean coal. And none of the statements are true, and they drive you crazy. And then like a vein starts to throb in my forehead, like that kind of thing. And that's the game. That's basically what they're up to. They're trying to just throw you off base. And that's why Representative Markey from Massachusetts had this to say.
If you're a Republican above the this line, it is no longer going to be possible for you to stop making jokes about climate change.
And the reason he says jokes is because some of the things the politicians say are so nuts that they must be kidding, right? So this is Paul Brown. He's from Georgia. And he was talking to his constituents, on a microphone and TV cameras. And he says, oh, climate change, evolution, the Big Bang Theory, those are all lies straight from the pit of hell. And that's fine to think it. I guess it's fine to say it. But he chairs the House Science Committee. So maybe he's not the right guy for the job. You know what I mean? Like maybe... Then there's this guy, this is Joe Barton from Texas. I've actually met him. They asked Joe, they said, Joe, your state has a lot of wind power. What about the wind? You create a lot of jobs with wind power. What do you think about wind power? And he goes, oh, wind power is no good because wind power slows down the wind.
What?
That was it. That was his whole statement. And he said that out loud in front of people. And everybody in the audience was like, you're face down. They basically, here was their reaction.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Sounds about right.
Mercy on your soul. Okay.
Last year, a year and a half ago now, President Obama gave an address about climate change. It was the first time a sitting president gave a speech solely about climate change and nothing else. Every president in modern history, going back to Johnson, has mentioned climate change, by the way, but this is the first time he gave a speech for no other reason than to talk about it, and he did it on a hot June day where he's sweating like a Baptist preacher when he did it. It was really kind of funny. And in it he said, okay, enough's enough. We got to do, now's the time. We need to act. We need to do it now. And he was sweating so much that I thought it was a joke. It kind of reminded me of this a little bit. You know, that's how much it just kept coming down. But he also said, you know, I'm not going to do my Obama impression, but he said, you know, coal companies are doing pretty good. Maybe it's time to cut the tax breaks because, you know, it's gone on long enough, kind of thing. And then all hell broke loose. Like, everybody freaked out. And the climate denial machine really kicked into high gear. And that's why the last 18 months, you've seen so much misinformation going on. But perhaps the best plan I've seen to combat climate change has been this one.
As climate change continues to create more frequent and devastating storms, we propose a new naming system. One that names extreme storms after policymakers who deny climate change. We propose something like this.
Senator Marco Rubio is expected to pound the eastern seaboard sometime early tonight. Windows are being boarded up and grocery stores are virtually empty as Marco Rubio threatens everything in his path.
Now, Michelle Bachmann is on the way, folks, and specifically the eye of Michelle Bachmann will be hitting Florida in a few hours.
Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann is incredibly dangerous. If you value your life, please seek shelter from Michelle Bachmann.
All right, you get it. Go. We need to go on a diet. And the diet I'm talking about, of course, is we need a carbon diet. That's basically what we need. But like anyone going on a diet, they don't want advice. Because I've gone on diets, you've had friends that have gone on diets, right? And you might have heard, you know, said to them, have you tried, I don't know, just eating right and exercising? And they go, no, don't be a moron. Instead, I'm going to take this little blue pill that causes anal leakage. That's better, right? That's got to be better. And when that doesn't work, okay, how about now? Try eating right and exercising. Maybe now you'll try it. They go, no, don't be silly. I'm just going to drink lemon juice and cayenne pepper for like 3 weeks. Perfect. Brilliant, foolproof idea. And when that doesn't work, okay, now maybe you'll try eating right and exercise. And they go, no, instead I'm going to have this painful, expensive procedure where they put a band around my stomach. That's got to be easier, right? And it doesn't work. In fact, sometimes it backfires and we get it even heavier, right? That's kind of how it works. And we've been doing that with carbon really for decades. Have you tried, I don't know, just curbing your fossil fuels and using less emissions? And no, don't be silly. Instead, we're going to invest billions of dollars into this thing called clean coal that doesn't exist. And it just doesn't work. If you're still working on buildings that are traditional, what I call toxic buildings, that ignore all these issues, you're essentially equivalent to an astronomer who thinks that the sun goes around the Earth. Which it doesn't. It doesn't do that. And by the way, it doesn't. It's the other way around. The Earth goes around the, well, whatever. But if you were an astronomer that believed that, you would do some pretty bad astronomy, right? And basically that's the same thing. If you were an architect that just ignores these things, you do some pretty bad buildings. And that's what's happened now. We've been doing pretty bad buildings. It turns out all the while we've essentially been building this skeleton. It might be pretty, but it's still a dead, lifeless skeleton. And what we should have been building is this, the whole creature, with the biological beauty and the respiration and the energy production and everything. And some people are dabbling, like they're doing this. I mean, they're getting there, but it's better. But what I do know is that this is clearly the wrong direction. This is a dead end. I mean, it's very pretty, but it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to do a metal building in downtown Los Angeles. It just doesn't, right? And also because I see how people react when I put them around buildings like this, living buildings. They have a visceral reaction to them. They smile when they see them. They reach out and pet them. It's really bizarre. They touch the buildings. It's really silly to me. They want to be around them, and they can't explain it. Now, I studied under students of Frank Lloyd Wright, and I would argue that Mr. Wright was the first green architect. And for those of you that don't know who Frank Lloyd Wright was, read a book or go to the library or something. I don't know. If you don't know who he was, probably just leave now. But if you don't know who he was, Frank Lloyd Wright was to architecture what Michael Jackson was to pop music. That's probably like a good analogy, right? Like he was a big deal if you haven't heard of him. And this is one of my favorite Wright buildings. This is a house he actually did for one of his children, his son David, in Phoenix. And that's his rendering. And it's essentially a big donut in plan. Literally a donut in plan. And essentially it's shaped to kind of let the sun kind of flow around it. And it's got these shading devices along the south side to block the sun, but it still has windows. And then this ramp circles around and goes up. And this ramp encloses this microclimate courtyard that has a little fountain in it and keeps cool year-round. And then as you come upstairs, it's essentially a textbook passive solar house, which is bent around the donut. And all of that might seem kind of commonplace today, but he did this in essentially 1948. So it's really kind of pioneering. And even though it's facing the south, right, there are windows along the south side, but they're very small. And they're essentially clear-story windows up by the eave. So they let in light but no heat. And it's just one room wide, typical passive solar house. And the house is really sited beautifully to its surrounding. You couldn't move it if you tried, essentially. It's just a textbook passive solar house. And this is what the front of it looks like. He used concrete block in part because it's cheap and in part because of the thermal mass, which works very well. Here's the front door, and you go through that central pivot door, and you enter the courtyard, and you can see that the house is set back from the pool, so the sun hits the pool and warms it up all day and heats up the thermal mass, but not the landscaping. And then at night, when it gets cool, it releases the heat. And then as you go up the ramp, you walk along there, and you can drag your fingers along the underside of the ramp, and you arrive at the front door, and you see the signature red tile at the front door, which he always does, and you walk in, and it's a pretty modest house, right? 3 materials. But this being a Wright house, of course, it has not one but 2 fireplaces, even in Phoenix. And this is the second one. And behind that second fireplace is the kitchen, which is pretty modest too. But cork floors, book match veneer, locally sourced wood cabinets, linoleum. They didn't have vinyl back then. Real linoleum. And by today's standards, it probably win an award for greenest kitchen of the year, right? But he did this in 1948. But Mr. Wright did not know what we now know, right? He didn't know about formaldehyde or VOCs or even asbestos or asthma or all those other things that we now associate with indoor air quality. He just didn't have to benefit from. But we know all these things, and yet we still build buildings like this. I mean, I would burn this building down if I could. But ironically, that would release more carbon. So, I'm torn. Like, I'd be a great arsonist, but I can't do it. Essentially, if you're still building these toxic buildings, you're essentially doing the equivalent of building PCs, when really you should have been building Macs, because they're better. Let's face it, they're better. They're just better. If you're still working on traditional buildings, you're essentially investing in typewriters in 1980. That's kind of the analogy here. Like, you're ignoring the inevitable onslaught of innovation and technology and performance that is about to come your way. And you're really what I would call the worst architect in the world. And they even made a commercial about it.
You're working hard, you know that it's true. You need a brand new soap that works hard too. You are the worst architect in the world.
Like that tile count. That's a real commercial. So let's reverse this trend. We can't keep fighting nature. Nature will kick your butt. Have you ever been in a hurricane? Nature will always win. Nature's tough. We should be making things better, not worse. We should be making things well, not sick. The exact opposite of what we've been doing. So let's build the way nature builds. And how does nature build? Very elegantly. This is an inside peek at your body, or an approximation of it anyway. And you see those black things? Those are called leukocytes. And those leukocytes swim around your body, and they're fighting off infection, because half the people in this room are sick. And everybody's gross, disgusting germs are attacking you right now as you sit here, and your body just fights it off. And you see those little shimmering things? Those are energy packets called cholesterol. And your body sends these out to your cells to feed you. So, by the way, some of you have too many energy packets. You've got too much cholesterol, but that's another story. And your body just does this while you sit here seemingly still. Your body's a whirlwind of activity. So your body's very much this habitat, right? As you sit here, you have 2 pounds of bacteria living on and in you. It's gross, by the way. You guys didn't mean to tell you about it. You got 2 pounds of bacteria living on or in you. It's symbiosis, right? So your body's also this incredible habitat, but it's also this incredible machine, pumping, processing, filtering, all the while. So it's this incredible machine. But it's also, it turns out John Mayer was right. Your body's a wonderland. It's this incredible wonderland. You can tell nobody's under 30 here. See, John Mayer's a singer, and he's got this. It's this incredible wonderland. It's just like as you sit here, you're shifting weight in your chair, you're respirating, you're adjusting your temperature, adjusting your comfort, you're processing this information, all in instant real time. It's this incredible thing. Every day, your body produces 50 trillion new cells to make up for the ones that have died. Every day, your body's pumping 1,900 liters of liquid that you pee out, of course. And every day, you're breathing in and out 11,000 cubic feet of air, which you then absorb the oxygen and expel carbon dioxide, which you give to the plants, and they do the reverse in return. It's amazing. And as I'm telling you all this, your little brain's processing it at 170 miles an hour, faster than any known computer. And holding up that big head of yours is a skeletal system, by the way, that's 4 times the strength of concrete and half the weight. It's incredible, right? Your body at its peak is capable of producing 2,000 watts of energy. Like that's on a bike, but still 2,000 watts of energy. You've seen The Matrix. It's amazing. And powering all this is not fossil fuels, but food, glorious food. And in your lifetime, you're going to eat 50 tons of this stuff. So all I'm saying is, every now and again, eat a salad. That's all I'm saying. Just, shake it up a little bit. As a byproduct of all of this, all of you are farting 14 times a day. All of you. And I know you're thinking, not me. Yes, even you, all of you. And I also know what you're thinking. It's like a balloon's worth. It's like this much, basically. Which means I'm imagining a balloon over each of your heads. It just makes me happy. And our buildings ignore all of this. They don't respond to any of this. They're just dead, lifeless boxes. Hey, I know, let's put known cancer-causing chemicals on all the walls called VOCs. And let's put windows in there that don't open. And then let's put our kids in there for 8 hours a day and make sure they learn how to read good. It doesn't work. It's not sustainable. Let's surround the site with more dead, lifeless material that just make hot places even hotter. And let's just crap out these houses and ignore where the sun is and where the wind is. And this is why that whole system just teeters all the time in an economic up and down that doesn't work. Because it doesn't. It's almost like something bad is about to happen and you can't quite put your finger on By the way, that was the second Shelley Long reference of the night, so if you're paying attention. Let's undo this. Let's reverse this. Let's build buildings that are living. Let's build buildings that are alive, teeming with life. I mean real, not this fake life, but real life, the same way your bodies do. It turns out nature has already provided us a roadmap for how to do this. This is called the Fibonacci sequence. You take 0 plus 1, add them together, and you just keep going. Right? And it goes on infinitely, obviously. And if you chart these numbers in 2 dimensions, you create what nature calls a spiral. And if you extrapolate them to 3 dimensions, it creates what nature calls a helix. And there are creatures on this planet that are building structures using this formula right now. And they do it without permits and without blueprints. They just do it. They just go and do it. It's amazing. Because if you look at plants very closely and you pay attention to them, it almost looks like they're alive. Because they're alive. They're plants. It's a joke. They're alive. They're plants. Wake up. They're living, right? We're not the only creatures to build on this planet, right? This is the paper wasp. It builds its nest in a matter of days. It takes wood pulp from local trees, mixes it with saliva, and makes a form of cement. And it can change the hydrology of the cement based on the humidity in the air. And it does it on this cool hexagonal pattern, by the way. This is the weaver bird. It builds its nest in a matter of hours using local grasses. And it builds this on this cool tripod shape. And it uses its own body as a tape measure. And it makes the opening just big enough so it can get in and out with none of its predators. It's amazing, right? And what do? We put up birdhouses everywhere. We're essentially giving them Section 8 housing when they're building these cool tripod things. This is why they poop on your car. That's all I'm saying. That's why they do it. They're mad. This is a butterfly egg. This is an owl egg. A wealthy form and color and geometry and explosion of ideas. All available to us. All at our fingertips. All being built now for millennia that we can learn from and that we can copy. Living buildings. That's what's needed. 3.8 billion years of research and development awaiting us if we just open our eyes to the possibilities. That's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. So now is the time to start and not wait to be asked. Now is the time. Living buildings, buildings that literally grow, buildings that we feed and nourish the same way we feed and nourish ourselves. And we're just experimenting. We're just scratching the surface of what's possible. We're just playing, really. All we have to do is put in our mindset that this is important, that this is a priority, and we can't wait to be asked. When we see things like this, it should inspire us to essentially build skyscrapers the same way that nature does. That's how nature builds. Nature is strong. Nature's tough. And how does mankind build? Just the exact opposite way. Just the, man, shove it in there, man, just brute. It just doesn't work, right? We look at nature as this thing we have to go around, like this obstacle that's just in the way, and we're not even doing it well. You know what I mean? It's just we're doing a bad job at it, and sometimes the results are just absurd, they're just crazy, without any thought. It doesn't matter how many resources you have. If you use them the wrong way, they'll never be enough. So let's be smarter about it. Let's realize that if you see something like this, that this has a value. In fact, it even has a history. And we can acknowledge and respect that history. You've all seen these little developments. They give them all these cute little names, right? So at Cross Creek Estates, you know, they basically just decimated the creek to get in and build whatever crap they built there. And at Wild Horse Canyon, they probably drove out all the horses that were there just to build whatever houses they built there. And really, I'm terrified to think of what they cut down here. That's a real sign. Yeah. Paulo Coelho said that the world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. So stop thinking about green building and start doing it. Start forcing it on your clients. Well, remember that you have a priority, right? That if you're going to build anything, that you have a responsibility to restore the nature that we've destroyed in the process. And to do that, every building should try to do 5 things. And this is my homework assignment to you to try to do. 1, every building should generate at least a portion of its own energy, which nowadays is easy. 2, every building should try to grow a portion of its own food, which actually becomes an opportunity for your clients and for the neighborhood. 3, every building should process at least some of its own waste, even if it's just composting. It's another opportunity. And 4, every building should clean its own water. And here in Oregon, that's actually pretty easy because we have a wonderful water income. And if you do the first 4 correctly, you're doing number 5 automatically, which is every building should attempt to sequester its own carbon. That's the goal. So I'm going to skip this. Sorry, I'm jumping around. In 1928, Herbert Hoover had a very famous campaign slogan, right? I see a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage. Remember that? Well, I mean, you don't remember, but you've read about it, right? How would we modernize this? How would we update this 87 years later? What would we do differently? Would it be an organic, hormone-free chicken in every pot and a plug-in Lexus hybrid in every garage? Like, it doesn't flow as well. But it's a vision, right? That's what we need is a vision. It turns out that FDR has similar vision, right? In 1944, in a State of the Union speech, he proposed a second Bill of Rights, saying that every American would have the right to a job, to a decent wage, to free health care. And then he died. None of it happened. But it was a vision. It was a bold vision. He basically wanted to raise America up to a standard of living we never before experienced. He wanted everyone to be an aristocrat. It was a great goal. But goals tend to freak people out. But it turns out that people get freaked out easily. Some of you are going to get freaked out when I tell you that we're spinning around at 700 miles an hour. That's going to freak you out. Or that we're traveling through space at 66,000 miles an hour. That's going to freak you. People get freaked out all the time. Don't be freaked out. I know that you have that nagging feeling, like that feeling that something bad's about to happen. You put your finger on it. I know that feeling. It'll pass. You'll be fine. You have to remember that we're smart, we're ingenious, we're innovative, we're creative. And we can do this, and we can do it together. So let's stop being afraid of our clients. Let's stop waiting for them to ask us and start doing it. I know that a client's favorite word is no, right? Hey, do you want this? Nah, nah. Well, how about solar panels? Well, nah, nah. And if there's anything you ask them, what about a green roof? Nah, nah. And that's how they sound. That's how they sound to me anyway. And just anytime you ask them anything, it's just no, and no, and no, and eventually it just gets to, oh, hell no. Right? It just eventually gets to that. If you know your client's favorite word is no, then stop asking them yes questions. Don't say, hey, do you want a green roof? Because they're just going, no, nah. Instead say, hey, you want to keep paying for heat? No. Wait, what? Okay, no problem. You don't want to keep paying for heat? We'll put on a green roof. Hey, you want to keep paying for electricity? No. Okay, done. We'll put solar panels on it. No problem. I know it's childish, and I know it's semantics, but it works. It really works. So you should try it. It's really amazing. Just blow it right back in their face. Just shove it right back in their face. It's incredibly effective. And then if any client says to you, well, I heard solar panels don't work, all you got to do is ask them 2 little words, and it's just beautiful. Oh, how many solar panel systems have you installed? Oh, none? So you don't know what the hell you're talking about then? Is that what you're saying? It's amazing. They all have an opinion, but they've never actually done it. And then I can say to them, well, I've installed hundreds of them, and I can tell you they do work if you do it right. and just right back, and this will upset them. I mean, granted, it'll make them upset, but it'll be okay. Because this idea that we're not going to do something because of some potential backlash that never comes, I call this preemptive backlash, I call it frontlash, really. I don't know what else to call it, really, where you don't do something that probably won't happen anyway. And it's just silly. It's just a silly thing to do. Because then nothing ever happens. We just don't end up not doing anything. We all grew up with the 3 R's, right? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, there's a new 3 R's. Redesign, renew, and regenerate. For every building, especially the existing ones. And we have to do it now. And if we start to think our way out of this mess, we can actually plant a victory for what, stop being Dodo Sapiens and plant a vision for what victory could look like for the 21st century. That's what's needed. To that end, I want to show you very quickly what I work on all day, which is called the Living Building Challenge. The Living Building Challenge is a certification tool. You've all heard of LEED, I know. So if, code is here, and LEED certified is here, and then silver, gold, and platinum is here, Living Building Challenge is here. It is still the most stringent rating system in the world because it calls for regenerative buildings. Buildings that are not less bad, but buildings that are good. It starts this premise of what would good look like. We don't want to be less bad, we want to be good. So a good building would generate more energy than it consumes. A good building would reuse its own water. A good building would avoid all known cancer-causing chemicals. That would be good. And you can't pick and choose what you follow. There are no credits. There's 20 imperatives, and they're all prerequisites, essentially. You have to do all 20 in order to meet them. If you do that, you pass the challenge. If you can't do all of them, you can get just basic pedal certification for energy, water, and one other. And a lot of buildings do that because they can't. Or you can just get net zero energy certification if your building consumes more or produces more energy than it consumes. So there's really 3 options to do it. And these are broken up across 7 categories, but we don't call them categories, we call them petals because they're like petals of a flower, they all intertwine. And these 20 imperatives are dispersed across all of those things. And some of the petals are obvious, right? Energy, water, that makes a lot of sense. But then we have a petal called beauty. We have another petal called equity. Because if you build the greatest building in the world and it's still ugly, well, that's not very sustainable, is it? Or if you build a green building in the world but it's for Monsanto, well, there's something wrong with that. That doesn't work either. So we have these other petals. There's really only 2 rules. One is that you've got to do all 20 of these things to get certified, fully certified. And 2, we base it on real data, not on what you think it'll do or how it'll perform, but we wait a year, take a year's worth of actual data and then certify it. We now have 250 projects that are going through the process all over the world in 18 different countries. And so now over 9 million square feet, actually. I got to update the slide. We also have then a framework for how people can use living building challenges in affordable housing projects. So everybody that says it's too expensive, it's not. We actually have a pathway for how to do it. We did it with enterprise community partners. And then if you're building more than one building, we have a living community challenge, which now has 12 pilot projects all over the country, including one right here in Portland. One of them is in Holy Cross down in New Orleans, which is pretty cool. We also have a labeling system for manufacturers called Declare. It's a transparency label. We've taken a lot of complex things and distilled it down to this very simple label. And the label basically says, do you have red list materials on it? Yes or no? Do you have known cancer-causing chemicals? Yes or no? And either you do or you don't. And the Declare label now does this. And there are now hundreds of companies that have now added this Declare label to their products. Mohawk Carpet, for instance, has put it on virtually all, 98% of their products. And it's like a literal label they have on the back of their samples. We also have a certification for companies called JUST, for social equity. So if your firm wants to practice what it preaches, maybe you want to get JUST certified. It's actually pretty easy to do. It just asks you to measure certain things. Our organization, which is a nonprofit, turns out that we had no diversity, right? We had a lot of men and women, but they were all basically boring white people. So we realized that was a problem, and we changed how we do our hiring and who we look for, and we've now since changed that. But it got us measuring that. We also have a volunteer network that's extensive, right? 400 volunteers in 20 countries, including China, that we call our ambassadors. And our ambassadors are essentially given tools and resources so they can spread the idea, kind of like Amway, but without the products, right? And they can spread these ideas to everybody. You can be a normal ambassador, or you can be a collaborative leader and like actually run a whole collaborative. Here in Portland, we have a great collaborative group, and I invite you all to be a part of it. They put on events every month, and I'm happy to connect you with those guys. You can also then become a member. We're a nonprofit. We're members, we need members, so I invite you to join. I'm not going to pitch your heart on it, but if you want to, great. We can even work out a little 2-for-1 deal, right? CSI, right? Whatever you want. We also publish a magazine called Trim Tab, which now goes to 25,000 people all over the world. We publish 4 issues a year. It's a great little magazine about all these issues, and you can read them online for free if you like. We even have our own book publishing arm called Ecotone, and we now have 15 titles that we've now put out. We including 2 new ones. One on Peter Busby from Perkins and Will. You guys know Perkins and Will. And in January, we had our Net Positive Conference, which is our deep dive in energy and water. We did that in San Francisco. And then coming up just in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, we have our Living Future Conference in Seattle. I would love for you all to go. If you want to go, take my card and I'll give you $100 off for a ticket. How's that? Is that a good deal? It is basically 1,200 people, all like just a great curated group of like hardcore green nerds and green building expertise. Great exhibitors, great sessions, great tours. It's my most fun conference that I go to of the 50 that I speak at every year. So please come. If you want more information, you can go to our website, livingbuildingchallenge.org or living-future.org. It's all the same. Okay, so now I have a homework assignment for you. I want you to take out a card. I want you to write on the back of the card something that you liked or maybe didn't like about this presentation, and fill it out and then give it to me, and I'll email you back. I promise. You can even put something that you're going to change as a result of this presentation. And I just want to know. If you don't want to write anything, I'm not going to make you, but I would like a card from all of you. Also, I'm going to stick around so we can chat afterwards if you like, and I think there might be still food or at least booze left, so you can enjoy that. And then if you want to email me, you can do it right there, or come up and grab a card, or I'll get yours. Otherwise, that's my speech. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming.
Wow.
You want to do questions?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So I teach out at Portland Community College, and I teach our sustainable construction practices class. And we just finished looking at the Load Center.
Yeah.
And do you know, has it gone through, it should be under the process of being evaluated?
Well, nobody knows this yet. We're going to announce it. We're going to announce it at Living Future, but yeah, it's officially certified as of 3 days ago, actually.
Great.
So.
Excellent.
We have an office here in Portland, right at the EcoTrust building, and then in the Bullitt Center we have our other office. So half our staff are in the Bullitt Center every day. But yeah, it's officially certified. The Bullitt Center, if you don't know,
come up and visit, right?
Yeah, please do come up and visit.
Okay. I mean, I'm sending students.
The Bullitt Center is it's an unusual building. It's an office building, 50,000 square feet, and has this solar canopy on it, and generates more energy than it consumes. But they also have waterless composting toilets in it, which were never done in the state of Washington before. And so the city of Seattle was kind enough to do it as a pilot. And now that it's done, and they see that nobody died, and right, now everybody is able to use composting toilets. It's pretty cool. So when you go to the Bullitt Center, be sure to poop. You should have a good poop, and you can experience what that's like. It's really something. Any other questions? None? Really?
I have one.
All right, go ahead.
Because I get questions all the time that I have to defend. From students who are young and eager but faced with reality. So you talked about shoving things down people's throats and why sustainability is a dirty word and why we're afraid of our customers. And so, my clients who are going to go out and get clients of their own, the fear factor is really because everybody judges everything based on their law, right? And so,
but that's exactly my point. They're judging things that they have no experience with. If they had put on solar on one of their projects, and the contractor had done solar before, and said, "Oh, it really doesn't work." Great, I get it. But what it actually happens is, whenever I force a contractor to do this, they become one of those annoying religious converts. Like suddenly they're diehard green building people, right? And they want to know more, and they go, "It's great, it's fun to watch." But the people that are most, vociferous about objecting to it are the ones that have never done it, and that's just crazy.
Well, and I think the students have an eagerness to go out and, they just swallow the Kool-Aid or whatever. They want to go out there and promote it, but they're having a hard time trying to formulate the vocabulary that will be persuasive enough to keep their client from going to the next guy, who's cheaper or, is offering some whatever. I mean, the issue, right?
Yeah, but the reality of it is, so for 22 years I had my own practice, right? I'd worked on projects all over the country, and except for 3 cases where I had essentially very, very rich celebrity type clients, all those projects had budgets, and pretty strict ones, right? So in every case, we didn't go over the budget. We weren't allowed. Now, there's always a point where some savvy client will then say, well, if we don't do these green things, could you build me a bigger house or a bigger office? And then I say, yeah, if you want to build the cheapest, most disgusting thing ever, then yeah, we could go a lot bigger. But why would you want to do that? And that's where the education process goes. It's the same thing, you know, what I usually say to them is, why don't you eat Twinkies every day? You'd probably get them for 79 cents. It'd be the cheapest meal you can get. Just eat that every day, and that's the best way to do it, right? And they go, well, that's ridiculous. But that's the same analogy. Why aren't we using this vinyl floor? It's $1.40 a square foot. Well, because it's vinyl, and it's in a fire it turns into arsenic, in a landfill it releases methane, and you know, it's like killing people all along the. I mean, how in good conscience, knowing what I'm about to tell you, how can you then enjoy the vinyl? And so I end up ruining. I never get invited back to dinner, by the way. I end up ruining things for. I'm like Debbie Downer. I just keep ruining things for everybody. But that's really the level of the discussion. Just because you can do something cheaply doesn't mean you should. You know, you start to get the feeling, especially with developers, that if they were allowed to use asbestos, they would still, right? It's like, darn, it's so cheap, but darn laws prevent me from doing it. And that lead paint was great too. Like, you get that feeling. And it doesn't make any sense how in a rational society, knowing what we now know, that we would still do these things. And that's basically what I ask people to do. I ask them to step back. We're not trying to be less bad, we're trying to be good. And good has, you know, certain expectations to it. And so that's why I'm so thrilled about the affordable housing framework we have for Livability Challenge, because this isn't, you know, the Bullitt Center is a not very nice, fancy building, $600 a square foot, right? But the affordable housing framework now enables everybody to do this at, you know, $70 a square foot. And so that's suddenly much more appealing. And that's really the way it should be.
So as designers and builders, how do we educate our clients to do things right?
Well, that's a great question. So I actually have and I'll send it to you all if you give me your card, but I actually have a tip sheet on our website that I can give you. But basically it's a bunch of simple things. One is don't wait to be asked, obviously, that was kind of the theme of the evening. But two, don't even tell them what it's for. Just pick greener things, right? So there's a list of no-brainers we do on every project. And the no-brainers are pretty straightforward. Every paint we specify is going to be zero VOC. Because why bother with the terrible stuff? And if they ask about it, and they go, hey, this is $5 a can more, well, then you can get a conversation with them. On small projects, you won't even notice. But the truth is, if you design a building correctly, there are savings down the line. So for instance, if I design a passive solar building, I can minimize the size of the HVAC system. If I use better windows, right, I can reduce the heat gain and cooling load. I mean, there's things that start to connect the dots, right? So we try to look at the whole system, the operational cost of the building, and then calculate that ROI in advance. So when the client is ready to say, hey, why don't you use the cheapest, most nastiest stuff here, I can say, well, here's why, and actually give them an answer. And for every job, get a solar quote. It's free, why not? And just say, by the way, I found a solar leasing program that'll do this. Energy Trust of Oregon, by the way, is here. They can easily help you with that. Or if they want to pay for it, that's fine too. And then you calculate what the payback is given their projected load. There's a great plugin called Safari. I don't know how detailed you want to get, but there's this plugin for SketchUp called Safari, which calculates the whole energy model thing, which is pretty cool. I'm not affiliated with it, I just like it. And you combine that energy model with the solar, and suddenly you get, hey, you realize you're only a 5-year payback with solar? And solar thermal is even less. So it starts to, there's these things that you just do automatically that just start to add up. And then the client gets caught up into it as well. So it's, your job is to be, change your mindsets.
And the Ryan project was a good example. How do we encourage more concept, which is considering like MVP, where we can go down and look at all these like eco categories, tack into this building, and have to design responsibly, considering site contacts, and how helpful is it without any systems.
Well, there's a lot of things we can't quantify too, that we know that we have studies on, right? That a building with natural daylight has higher test scores, higher worker productivity, fewer absenteeism days. They're harder to quantify, especially because they relate to things like insurance that we don't normally deal with as architects. But then there's direct things like operational costs, which are very easy to do, right? So, for instance, there was one, I worked in a building, we designed a stair so that way, if you went in, you were encouraged to use the stair for the elevator. It was a 3-story building anyway. But by putting the stair up front, it became a design element, it became a feature. We spent a lot more money on the stair than we probably would have if it was just a fire stair. But because it was up front and center, people liked to hang out on it. And it became kind of a conversation piece. Well, because of that, people used the elevator less. So the electricity load went down. And we were to add that up. So it kind of paid for the stair within 3 years. Now, when you tell certain clients that, they won't believe you. But when you start to put the numbers to it, it starts to make a lot of sense. Okay, well, please fill out a business card, give it to me, and I will email you back. And if you want to come to Living Future, let me know, and I'm happy to send you that code. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the fruit and cheese or whatever that you vultures haven't eaten yet. And enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
It rains here in Oregon, and you know that you just moved here, so welcome to Oregon. Have some rain.
Oh, thank you. I'm
and
honored.
we hope to see everyone in April for the new member of the Lloyd District Project. Thank you.